The 4-day work week is all the rage. You've heard about it, and its proponents say it increases productivity, it decreases burnout, and somehow it keeps revenue going up and to the right. But is the 4-day work week actually a cure-all for all of society's problems? Spoiler alert, we don't think it is. And we'll explore what you don't realize about the 4-day work week on today's episode of Per My Last Email. Let's get into it. Kaila, what is up?
Not much, Kyle.
Did you hear Morning Brew is instituting a 4-day work week?
I did not. This is breaking news.
We're not actually.
Yeah.
Would you be excited if we did?
Yes.
Genuine, yeah?
Yeah, genuinely, yes.
Because you just want to work less? Because you're lazy?
This feels like a trap. Yeah, I think like it would be nice to have like a Wednesday off.
Oh, you would put it Wednesday?
I think so.
Interesting. I would do Friday or Monday.
Really?
You would do a midday off day.
I would do a midweek day off because I feel like it would, think about how nice it would be. 2 days off, 2 days of working, 1 day off.
Yeah, that actually, you've changed my mind.
That was so quick.
In 10 seconds. It would be nice to have a little midday retreat.
Imagine Wednesday. Nobody. You could go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
You could peruse the aisles of Trader Joe's.
I haven't perused an aisle in years.
Instead of having to be crammed in like little sardines.
Get some laundry done. Exactly. I haven't washed this sweatshirt since the podcast launched.
I actually believe that.
Yeah, it's not good. No, I have. Okay, the reason I bring it up, we're talking 4-day work week, and I don't know what your takes are.
Okay,
so I'm very excited to talk about this topic. So let's start with some news. The New York Times just did a write-up on British businesses that have been testing out the 4-day work week. And they did a 4-day work week. There was no reduction in pay, and they would do it for a 6-month trial. Okay. And this test covered about 1,000 workers. What was really interesting, the UK actually did this test earlier, about 2 or 3 years ago. It's led by a nonprofit called like the 4-day work week. They are randomly obsessed with this idea and trying to spread it across the UK. And when they previously did this trial, 56 of 61 or 92% of companies said they'd actually continue doing the 4-day work week.
Did they?
I haven't followed up.
They said
yet.
They would. We don't know if they have.
We don't know if they have. Okay. You know, the Times didn't report on that. Okay, so New York Times, get your shit together. Then they followed this company called Brand Pipe, and that was launching this. And basically what the study found is that 70% of people reported less stress, less burnout, and that so far the revenue was unaffected. And in order to get to the 4-day work week, I think this is very important, the 4-day work week nonprofit had 6 weeks of training for Brand Pipe, the company that was running this experiment, in order to help with logistics. Like, how would this actually be implemented? How are we going to cover for days off, et cetera, et cetera? So they didn't just like one day flip a switch and switch to the 4-day work week. There was training involved in this process. But I think the numbers are really interesting. Like, it has shown, study after study, to increase productivity. Employees love it because they can peruse the aisle at Trader Joe's, as we've mentioned. And it hasn't hurt business. And there's a big asterisk there because I don't think you can really see if it hurts business in like a 6-week trial period or 6-month trial period. That probably has a long tail effect. But it seems interesting. Thoughts?
I just don't know why we're talking about this.
What do you mean?
I don't know why we're talking about this. It's never going to happen. Like, it seems like... Okay, yeah, one random British company like decided that they wanted to give employees an extra day off. It's never going to be implemented as something like the 5-day work week. Like, it's never, the US is never going to have a mandated 4-day work week.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, we can talk about how great it is and like how much it benefits employees. But we're never going to do it. So I don't even care to talk about it.
Well, all right. The podcast is over, folks. Thanks for tuning in. This was our shortest episode in history. Okay, to your point, I don't think that the U.S. is going to mandate a 4-day work week. Also, I think it's very important when we're talking about this to think about, like, one, this wouldn't really affect every business. Like, if the U.S. government says you can only work, they can't, like, force Morning Brew to let us.
Well, no, it's the same thing as like the 5-day work week, where it's like overtime is past.
Exactly, and that's if you're an hourly worker. Right. If you're salaried, this doesn't really affect you. It would be a firm-wide decision, not a government decision, mandated across firms. The second thing is, at the end of the day, there's still going to be industries that have to work 7 days a week. And maybe, again, they're like scattered around like retail. It's a very different schedule than like a traditional 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And so I think when we're talking about the 4-day work week, it is really important that you have to almost talk about it at a firm level. You can't just blanket say this would happen and every problem would be solved across the US. But where I think you're wrong is I think there's tons of lessons we can take from this experiment that they're doing in the UK that apply to the US, or that employees should be thinking about, and people that are running companies should be thinking about. The first is, what was interesting is they didn't just make this change to a 4-day work week and then kept everything as the same. It actually said they kind of reinvented their whole the way they work. For example, they made tight meeting agendas mandatory. It was basically like, no agenda, no meeting. We don't have infinite time anymore, so we need to be more efficient with the time we have. The second thing they did is they actually made blocks of focus hours. So they would say, for example, like Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., you're not allowed to message or email anyone internally. That is like deep work time where you can think about big projects, you can write the memos, you can catch up on all your administrative tasks. No rings, no pings, no distractions. And I think that's actually the big unlock here, which is, it could be 4 days, it could be 7 days, like however many days you want to say you work. It's not about the 4-day work week. It's about making every day you work the most efficient. And I think there's tons of lessons we can learn from this experiment about how to do that.
So I think that where I agree with you is when a company uses the 4-day work week decision as a forcing function to reevaluate everything about
how we work. It's like a Trojan horse.
Yes.
Exactly.
Where I think it's a problem is when it's like, oh, we're doing a 4-day work week and therefore everything else is going to solve itself. That's not going to happen. If you have an effed up culture, it's going to be even worse when you have to cram it into 4 days worth of work.
I think that's such a good point that this is, I think, downstream of culture. Like if you have a culture where everyone is slacking you at all times and it's like high urgency and you're supposed to be in a million different places at once, like just cramming that into 4 days will probably make things worse. Those 4 days will feel even more crammed. Like the key is to create a culture where people understand what they're evaluated on. You have flexibility in how you achieve those outcomes. And I think you have a culture that has some like collaborative time, but also some time that is no meetings. Like I'm shocked that more companies haven't done these like focus blocks or like no meeting Wednesdays.
It's the same exact reason. We've just talked about this with all of our like the return to office.
Kayla's like, I'm done talking about this.
No.
Fix these companies.
No, literally. Okay, we've talked about this with return to office. We've talked about this with workplace surveillance. And now with the 4-day work week, all of this is coming at the point that we want the easy way to determine how somebody is being productive. And as long as we have attached productivity to hours worked, regardless of the output, we will never have an effective 4-day work week.
Go off.
I saw he snapped for.
I was snapping for those that aren't on YouTube.
I need the. That felt really great. So.
No, it's really true. What the participants in this study in the UK rated it 9.1 out of 10.
Okay.
And again, we talked about how it like didn't affect productivity. To me, like nothing gets 9.1 out of 10. Even toothpaste, it's only 4 out of 5 dentists. It's never 5 out of 5. So this is like the highest scoring thing I've ever seen, which again, I don't think means immediately we have to do a 4-day work week. What I think it's signaling is like there is incredible appetite to find a solution to the problem of we are all overly distracted. It feels like you're never offline. It feels like you can always be reached. There's this high sense of urgency for everything where you can't effectively prioritize.
But does the 4-day work week change that? You can still be contacted on Wednesday when you're off.
Well, again, goes to the point of like culture. I think culture is very important. But I think the idea of the 4-day work week, which I actually quite like, is you can't be it's like, some people could email me on Saturday, but I don't have an expectation to respond. And like people don't really do that too much at Morning Brew. So I think it would be like Wednesday's off. What are you doing emailing me? And if you do, like, I'm not going to look at it till Thursday. Even when what I think is like a big unlock here, when we have a holiday at Morning Brew and we have a 4-day week, I kind of do some work on the day off, but it's so nice knowing that like no one's going to bother me.
So this is my question for you.
Yeah.
I have already discussed that I would spend my Wednesday at Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
Would you work? You would use it as a meaningless day.
I would use it as a meaningless day, but again, like I think what I would do is like go to Trader Joe's, do my laundry, but you got 24 hours in a day. Like I would carve out 3 hours and like get through my inbox, like actually think about like a big problem that we need to solve. Like every person I talk to at every company is like, I don't have any time to actually think about like a big project or a long-term goal or like put my thoughts down on paper, because I think we have too many meetings. The meetings aren't like ran well. We're ringed and pinged and distracted all the time. So I think a 4-day work week is interesting because it's a forced constraint where now you've freed up 24 hours to do what you want, but some of that might be to think about these big problems at work that you want to solve, you just don't have the time.
Yeah, so this to me, what you're describing is not a 4-day work week.
Yeah.
It's a meeting-free day.
Yes.
So like if...
I think it comes down to branding.
Yeah.
And I think like whoever is doing the 4-day work week PR, their PR team is incredible.
But this is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Is I think that if we want to do a 4-day work week, we should have that day off. Like if we're trying to enforce boundaries, it shouldn't be like, this is the day to do your deep work. Because then it's the same issue. Okay, so maybe now's a good time to talk about Tokyo, because I have some big thoughts about Tokyo, and I would love...
Also, I just love for you listening, having no idea how we're pivoting to Tokyo, you just going, I think now's a good time to talk about Tokyo.
I really want to go. No, that's what I would spend my one day off.
Yeah. Okay, so what Kaila is alluding to is it's not just the UK that's experimenting with this. I mean, every country I think is thinking about it, but Tokyo has a really interesting take on the 4-day work week. They announced that they're going to let government employees that work for the city of Tokyo, their government, have a 4-day work week. It's not to increase productivity. It's not to drive efficiency. It's because the work-life balance in Tokyo, they think, is really messed up.
Yeah.
And they're actually looking at birth rates, and it's under the quote-unquote like replacement level where you are growing your population. And they're citing that basically women and men, like the work culture there is so intense that they need to like do a 4-day work week so there's more time for families. And so they're seeing the 4-day work week as a way to approach like a societal issue that they're seeing in Japan.
So I have a few thoughts on this. First is I think when we're talking about the 4-day work week, again, which I think is kind of stupid and isn't going to happen, and there's no reason we should be having this podcast episode in the first place. It's like, what's the outcome? What's the desired outcome? And I think that everyone else is using it as an employee perk. Oh, you get time off. You get to have better boundaries. This is the first one where I've seen like, okay, we're trying to solve a societal ill.
Yeah, a big one.
We've deemed that the birth rate is too low and we want to fix that. But what I'm curious about, and I did some research and I haven't been able to see the correct, like the details on this.
Okay.
Is it everybody that works in the government in Tokyo is getting a 4-day work week, or is it you can take a day off? Because if it's that, I don't foresee it being used. Well,
this is really interesting because when we were talking about culture earlier, I think the Tokyo case is actually a perfect example of where culture, it's like culture eats strategy, like culture eats whatever else you're trying to do. The work culture in Japan is very different, I think, than the work culture in the US or other countries that I'm like familiar with. And according to CNN, it said many sociologists attribute the birth rates to unforgiving work culture and rising cost of living. They have a term, karoshi, which means death by overwork.
Yeah.
And to your point about how many people would select this if given the opportunity, a company with 63,000 employees tried to roll this out in Japan. Guess how many employees opted into a 4-day work week?
1,000.
150.
Yeah.
Because they sensed, if I opt in, how does my employer think about this?
Yeah.
They value loyalty, they value super hard work. And so no matter what you try to roll out, the culture of the place ultimately dictate what people say they are open to. So I don't see this catching on in Japan for the reason that we were talking about.
Right. So it's like, oh, yay, congrats. Like your employer is now allowing you to take a day off, but you're going to be penalized for it. It's probably going to further, like perception between women and men. Because if a woman gets pregnant, they feel like they have to take that 5th day off.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to actually have the impact that they want unless it comes with a big culture change, and they're not going to be changing the culture of Japanese work overnight.
Yeah, nothing would be an overnight success. So maybe in one way, this is an attempt for them to change the culture, and we can't ever see the effects until, decades down the line. But I think it's an interesting approach from the government to say, hey, like we're going to work 4 days a week because we need to change the culture. And, more people do it and more people see it's working. And, hopefully it leads to the outcomes that Japan wants.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
When you think about a firm implementing the 4-day work week, you expect that to be from 40 hours to 32 hours, same pay, correct?
Yes.
Like, no, we're not saying like we're just now working from 9 to 7, 4 days, right? Because then that's still the 4-day work week.
Yeah.
Or it's still 40 hours.
Yeah, I mean, most people, when they say the 4-day work week, the expectation is less hours, same pay, or if you exceed the 32 hours, you would get overtime pay.
Assuming you're...
Again, this is where it just gets very difficult because, like, we're not paid hourly in our positions at Morning Brew. And so, like, I don't have hours that I work. Some days I come in 8, some days I come in 10. Like, I have stuff I need to get done, and they trust that I get it done. So in some ways I could create, like, a 4-day work week light for myself.
Well, so this is what I'm thinking is the understanding that, like, we have increased technology now, so we can fit 5 days worth of work into 4 days? Or is the expectation that we're going to be hiring more people to fill the like lack of productivity per person? Because either way, I don't think that a company is going to opt for this, except for as like, this is an employee perk, and in a market that is more like employer focused, where they have the power, there is no incentive. It's the same thing as remote work.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, we have remote working options until it's actually like really easy to find new employees.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden a mandate comes out.
Return to office.
Yeah.
It feels like the exact same thing. Okay, if we're in an employee-centric market, we're going to have 4-day work weeks as a perk. As soon as that flips, never mind, we're coming back to the office 5 days a week. And guess what? You can't say anything about it because you can't find a job somewhere else.
Yeah. So great point. Many comments on it. The first is the pay thing. So Tokyo also rolled out an option for elementary school teachers to have this, where they would work less hours, but they got paid less.
Right. No,
Which I was like, I don't know if that's solving the problem. Yeah. So there is this tension between, oh, you want to work less? Cool, we'll pay you less.
Right.
And then employees are like, wait. Like, that wasn't the idea here. So the way that I think we should be framing this discussion is, like, if work got invented today, and with the technology we have, like, how would we create the days? Like, how would we have the most efficient work structure for all of our employees? I doubt it would be like we would just stumble exactly upon what we're doing now. So there is some inefficiencies. What I think, again, is most interesting about a lot of these 4-day work week studies, to your point about like employers have a lot of power, I think you should frame it as pro-employer. Like, okay, here's what I have a solution for you, employer. We can increase productivity. We can decrease stress and burnout for our employees. And quite frankly, we can save a little bit of money on like energy costs because we're only activating, 4 days a week.
Assuming.
Yes.
This is also another thing. Assuming that everyone takes the same day off.
Yes, exactly. There's so many caveats here, of course. Like, to me, I'm interested in that if I was a CEO or if I was running a company. I'm like, wait, that does kind of sound like a cure-all to a lot of different things. We're seeing employees be burnt out at higher and higher levels. Yeah. We're seeing productivity at some firms like maybe kind of stagnate. How do we like re-energize our team? This seems like something that should at least catch your attention, to be like, yeah, you're right. We transitioned from like when we were all in person, 5 days a week, very strict hours, to now a hybrid setup with more tools, more technology, and a flexible work schedule, but we didn't change this idea that it's a 9 to 5. Yeah. Maybe we should investigate that. To me, this is such like an exciting thing because I don't think we're working as efficiently as we could be right now. And I think it takes a reimagining of how we structure our days.
I 100% agree with that. I don't necessarily know that like the 4-day work week is what we would come to anyways. I think like...
Yeah, I don't think every firm independent of each other would all be like the 4-day work week is perfect.
Yeah.
But what I do think is that every firm out there isn't working as efficiently as they could be.
I agree.
And there's some easy things we can do that for some reason no one's doing.
Which is,
I love the idea of like a no meeting block of time. I'm obsessed with that idea. Like, I think that's really cool. And yes, you can do it individually, but like, it's tough to be the only person who's like, actually, I don't have meetings Wednesday. And they're like, no, I just invited you to.
yeah, you're actually about to have a meeting.
Yeah, it's like, no, you do. So unless it's like, no, firm wide, we just don't have internal meetings on Wednesday.
But again, that requires a company to question everything about how they view productivity and how they view work.
Yeah.
Because as of right now, meetings equals productivity.
Yeah, meetings equals FaceTime and meetings equal this
Meetings
is a good
equal
worker.
I'm busy. People
Yeah.
look at my calendar when it's filled and they're like, whew, you got a lot going on. Little do they know it's lunch.
Lunch, snack,
Snack. Coffee
reheat
break.
lunch.
Like, it looks like I'm really busy. I mean, obviously I'm not doing that.
Yeah, Kaila just outed herself.
No.
Meeting with HR incoming.
No, but you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, if we're, whatever heuristic we're using, we need to question that and do the work to come up with a better system. And implementing a no meeting Wednesday is all fun and good.
Yeah.
But that requires you to rethink, okay, if we're saying meetings aren't that important, then how are we evaluating you and your efficacy?
Right. Yeah. And I think it is really interesting. Like, obviously, we've done 36 some podcasts now. Like, this theme really does keep coming. I think it is like kind of the fundamental question of the hybrid work setup, which is how do we evaluate performance in a way that we used to be able to, and now it's probably not as effective. And until we solve that, a lot of these ideas kind of fall flat because you're eventually pulled back to this inertia of like, if I don't see you, you're not being productive.
Yeah.
I'm evaluating on how many meetings you have in your calendar and not on output. So I think that's a really, really great point. If you are like an employee, I'm interested, like, and you've read all about the 4-day work week and you're like seeing how it's helping people be less burned out and more effective. Like, is there something an employee could do based on this research to make their day more effective?
I mean, no, probably not. Like, you're an employee. You're not going to be like, I'm actually going to start doing a 4-day work week.
All right. Well, I thought I was putting a little T-ball up on a tee for you to hit a home run.
Sorry.
So I'll answer my own question.
Okay, great.
Something I've done, which again, I think one of the things that came out of this is like having blocks of time where you just like block your calendar repeated on advance so no one can bother you is really helpful. So like I have made a block, it's from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. every day. And that's like a really good time for me to like put some finishing touches on like a big thing I'm writing or like really just like write for like an hour on some projects. And I love that time. And like no one puts time on my calendar there because they look and it's busy.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
I think it's a really good tactic.
Okay.
I think you just have to hold firm because I will look at your calendar and I'll see a block from 8 to 10 every day.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh, that's not a real meeting. I'm going to place something for 9.
Yeah.
And I've done it multiple times and you always accept.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe the other tactic is being like,
Strong.
I'm busy.
Yeah.
The calendar says I'm busy.
Yeah, for sure. I think I like that tactic.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And if you're leading a team, again, I think you could do this on a team-wide level as well. Like, of course, if you're in like client services, you're not going to go to an external person and be like, actually, I'm sorry, we don't meet on Friday, so I can't discuss that deal.
But that's the thing. It's the same exact thing for the 4-day work week. No one's going to be like, actually, we don't work on Wednesdays.
Yeah. So if you're in client when they did this study, in client services, they basically just had overlap coverage.
Right.
So like your 4-day work week would look different than someone else's 4-day work week. Someone was always working. So again, it's very complicated. I think it's important for like firms to think about this instead of like society at large.
Yeah. I do have one tactic I think, for an employee, which is if you are somebody who works at a company that has like unlimited PTO, which is something that I view very similarly to the 4-day work week, which is like really lovely in theory.
Yeah.
And like really bad in practice.
Yeah.
Because we have unlimited PTO, for example, and we do a really good job of taking it because our SVP of people, Kate, is like, if you don't take this, like you need to.
For those listening on Spotify, not watching, Kaila made a gun with her hand.
No. But she's like, she identifies the importance of taking that time. It's not like unlimited PTO, which typically means you're not taking any PTO at all. Versus if you have 20 days, you're going to try and max that out. And if you don't and you leave, you get paid out for those days off.
Yeah.
So that's something that like I love unlimited PTO because I use it. It feels like the same thing for the 4-day
Yeah,
work
you could
week.
say you have a 4-day work week, but if you were in client services and people are still bothering you and
It's not gonna work.
Someone works Thursday and you don't, but they're still messaging you and you're responding,
Right.
it doesn't work
It
unless the
erodes-
culture
Exactly.
is there.
But if you do have something like unlimited PTO, you could always take one Friday off a month.
Yeah, like you literally could just make your own 4-day work
Every
week.
other week. Like it's literally unlimited. Now, granted, if you overuse it, people are gonna be like, what's going on? But like I do like the idea of like one Friday a fortnight, you know? So instead of
Every 2 weeks for those who aren't 1800 medieval scholars.
whatever. So like one Friday every other week
Yeah.
being like a blanket off. I think that's a good way as a company to start experimenting with it. And if you're an employer and not an employee and you're like wanting to dip your toe into the 4-day work week like vibes, try implementing little tests like that to see if it's possible in your company.
Yeah, and not just if you're running a company, if you're running a team. I'm so excited by that. Like try blocking, like do a day where you don't interact with your team. It's no like team meetings, no rings, pings, or distractions only in case of emergency, and just see what happens. It's funny because there's all of this focus on AI right now. AI is going to drive efficiency. Oh my gosh, it's going to make our company so efficient. And then we have all of these stats, which is just like, if you just don't bother your team 1 day a week, it'll also drive efficiency. And we're like, nah, not as sexy. I like the AI little robots instead. It's like, there is just this low hanging fruit of optimizing your team and optimizing efficiency across your firm. And it just seems like people aren't doing it. And so that's my call out. If you run a team or run a company, experiment with some of this stuff because the initial data is really persuasive, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're watching on YouTube, you see that we have a holiday theme
It's
behind
time.
us. Tinsel, poinsettia, little Christmas tree. We love it. We're festive.
If you're listening when this comes out, you know that it's the holiday season.
Yes, it's the holiday season. So what we have done, because Kaila is my favorite co-host on the show, I had to give her a gift. We've decided to do a little Secret Santa, a little gift exchange.
It's not a Secret Santa. It's just a gift exchange.
Yeah, I guess we do
record.
know
We
who's
know
giving
who's
it.
giving
So it's the opposite of a
it's
Secret
from.
Santa. It's a known Santa. Are you ready?
No, not really. Can you unwrap it for me and then present it to me and tell me about it?
No, you have to take it out. You have to take it out.
Okay.
'Kay.
All right. So there's things in here. I hope this is fun. Okay. So the first thing is
Yep.
Liana. Oh. Okay. This is actually very cute.
It's a print of dog walking. Can I say why I got it for you?
Yes, please.
Because when you and Ryan first moved to New York and you were destitute, poor, I'm kidding. You couldn't make it.
Rent was very high.
Yes.
For our salaries.
Yes. You started dog walking to make
were on
extra
Rover,
money.
yes.
And so I thought that was a nice thing. Now
is
that you've made
lovely.
it in the big city, you can stay humble by looking at that.
Stay humble.
'Kay.
This is beautiful. I love
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
And then it looks like there's another thing in here
One more thing. I probably
that
should
is
have
wrapped.
unwrapped it.
It's okay. The magic of editing. We'll speed this up a little.
Yeah.
It's a mug. An old dog.
Come on.
new
Look
tricks.
at that.
Are you calling me old?
No, I just thought it was cute.
It is
and
cute.
it's dog related.
It's nice.
So it is a mug and there is an old dog reading a book called New
Tricks.
Tricks.
One could argue
Turns
that
out you can teach an old dog new tricks.
if you're this mug.
Yes.
You can. Okay, wonderful. I would also like to note that this was not gift wrapped, but instead was thrown into a Morning Brew tote bag that says, I like my coworkers like I like my coffee roasted.
Promo plug shop.morningbrew.com. Actually,
Fantastic.
I don't know if that's our URL, but
It is.
people will figure
All
it
right.
out. Okay.
So now I have mine also slightly poorly wrapped.
Here we go.
I've got a
Wow,
piece of paper
I'm
on it.
So
Good luck.
excited. Okay, so for those listening, the box it's in has cute animals riding various forms of transportation.
Yeah. So
I am pulling out one. It is, I guess, wrapped with half a piece of paper. And
it's a Muji notebook.
It is a Muji notebook.
And we are not sponsored, but I love Muji. And you write all of your notes for the podcast on printer paper.
It's true. I go into the printer and I open up the physical printer and steal a piece.
And that is horrifying to me. So I got loose leaf so that you can write it in there, and then when it's time, pull it out so you still don't have to have the full notebook in your lap.
I love it. I love the design. Black is great. And also, I like this little
You can pop it into a little notebook if you want.
Thank you so much.
Okay, there's also a Muji pen.
Oh, there's a Muji pen. Okay.
So that you can write things because you always ask me for your pen. Okay, so this is something I've had for a long time. So do you know who Mischief is?
Yes.
So Mischief is this like fun little brand. And a while ago, they created dead startup toys. And so this is a Theranos mini lab. So if you're on YouTube, this is pretty fun to see.
Yeah, for those who don't know Theranos, you're lucky. I don't know how you've avoided it, but they were going to test blood and then figure out every disease.
They said they did, but they were lying.
I think Elizabeth Gilbert's in jail. Not Elizabeth Gilbert.
Holmes.
Elizabeth Gilbert wrote Eat, Pray, Love. Great book.
Elizabeth Holmes is in jail currently. And so it's one of those little testers. It's a fake little toy. But I figured, you could use some new toys now. You're an incoming father.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm going to give my daughter this and say, you too could be a swindler founder.
Okay, so then I'll give her a black turtleneck onesie as my first gift to her.
That would be fantastic. I am currently looking for $10 million to start this. I love it. That's going on my desk.
Perfect.
Great toys.
I thought that was fun.
I love it. Should we wrap this up?
Let's do it.
All right. Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Wogu.
Kybria Morgan is our senior content coordinator.
And our chief content officer is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thanks for listening. Happy holidays.
And enjoy your 4-day work week.